Hi and welcome to this video. What I'm going to be looking at here is how we would set up a controller and do the calibration of the sticks and the dead zone and the sensitivity and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to plug my Tyrannos in. There we go. So you can see I've already done the axis detection for this. It's already picked that up when I put it in, and I've assigned everything that I want within here. Set up all the axes and all that sort of thing, and for many people they go, okay, that's it, I'm done, this is good, I don't need to do anything else, and actually that's not quite true. There's this calibrate function up here, and if we click that, it takes it into our calibrate controller dialog. And what I want to show here, now this has already been calibrated, so I've been through and already calibrated all of this. But if you were to come in here with a new controller, what you would find is that there would be a bunch of dead zone in here, probably around about that much. This red section here is the dead zone. So if I just move my throttle up and down, you can see the yellow marker here is my stick position as it's detecting it. So I'm getting a full throw here from -1 to +1. And that's because before I came in here I actually did a Windows calibrations to make sure that I'm getting -1 to +1, or in Windows it's -127 to +127. I have another video on that, I recommend checking that out. This line here is obviously the 0 center point, and this white marker at the top here is the output. So the yellow marker represents the input that it's seeing, and the white marker represents the output that it's producing from that yellow input, and that will make sense in a moment. So things we want to do. So by default you would have a deadband on your throttle channel, which means that when you're flying around the center stick, nothing is happening when your yellow marker here is within this red bit. So if I was to move this up a lot, you can see, you know, all the time that yellow marker is inside that red area. This value here is not changing. The output value is not changing. As you can see, as I come out of here, it starts to move. I go into the red zone, nothing happens. I come out of the red zone, suddenly it starts to work again. So that's dead zone in operation, demonstrated nicely by the white marker. Now on a throttle channel, obviously we don't want any dead zone at all. You know, we don't want a dead spot in the middle of our throttle range, mid-stick. You know, when we're flying a quad, this is where we're working a lot of the time, in this mid-stick area. You know, little tiny adjustments for height. You don't want nothing happening while you're doing that. So this needs to go whack, nothing, no dead zone at all. Now you can see the white area in around mid-stick is following my stick perfectly, which means I've now got that lovely fine adjustment for the throttle around mid-stick, which is where we're spending most of our time flying a quad. Something else to talk about I'll do on the next channel. So let's look at roll. So let's find roll. There we go, there's roll. So axis 1 is roll. You can see the quad moving and you can see the bars moving, and you'll typically find that in these first few axes here, you know, the first 4 or 5 axes is where you'll find most of your controls for a quad. Although there are absolutely tons in here, most controllers use these first few axes. So for roll, obviously we have a center stick position for roll, and we want to make sure that, you know, for the centering on our controller, when we just let go of the stick, we have a dead band here that is large enough that we aren't going to get any drift on our quad. You know, we don't want none at all, because then you may get a tiny, you know, if your stick doesn't center absolutely perfectly, then you might get a little bit of drift in the quad. So you just want a tiny bit of dead zone in here for that center stick position, just to make sure that when the stick is in the center, or when you return the stick to the center, if your pots on your transmitter aren't quite perfect, there's a little bit of leeway there to make sure that it's not going to drift. Something else to be aware of is that when you bring your stick back to center, it might not actually come back to this 0 point. Not all pots are particularly good, so I can simulate that. So I'm just going to put a load of trim, not on that channel, on my roll channel. Here we go. I'm going to put a bunch of trim in here to simulate a bad pot on a transmitter. So, you know, I move my stick, I return it to the centre, and oh, we have a problem. You know, it's not coming back to this centre point, and in fact it's putting a load of right hand drift into my model. So in this situation we want to move the 0 point so it matches the pot of the stick, or we want to trim this out using our trims, and we can do it either way. So you could adjust your trims, you know, and put it back into the centre, or if you don't want to adjust the trims, you can move the 0 point. So you can see here that red bit represents the 0 point, and I can just centre it up like so on where my yellow pointer actually is. So this is now the centre. So you have a choice, and you can do it either way. For most transmitters this shouldn't be an issue, but you know, you want to make sure your 0 points are right, otherwise you're going to get drift on your quad. So let's put my trim back in the centre, and we'll put this back in the centre like so. Okay. So I've got a tiny little dead zone. You know, I've reduced my dead zone down. It's a tiny little dead zone, but enough that, you know, my stick centering still works and I've got no drift. So the other thing to talk about is sensitivity. So you can see at the moment that the yellow bar is my stick input, the white bar is my stick output, and what the sensitivity does, if I hold this roll stick over to the right, so I've got full right roll in here, if I adjust this sensitivity, you can see that I'm now only getting half of my stick movement for full stick movement. So I've got a full stick movement of input, but only half a stick's worth of movement of output. So my quad will now feel really quite sluggish. I'm not getting, you know, the full throw for full throw of the stick, and we can go the other way as well. So if I was to put the sensitivity up a long way like this, what happens is you can see that, so I'm holding about half stick in now, and I'm getting full throws almost. So this is making the quad oversensitive now to stick input. So what we want ideally is for the white bar to follow, or the white arrow to follow the yellow arrow exactly, and that normally happens somewhere here around the centre. So we can see here that's all following really quite nicely now. So I'll get a nice linear output from my sticks. Okay, so that's it for all of these. You can do a calibrate in here. I don't particularly like the way the calibrate works in this interface. This is an off-the-shelf USB system, and when you click calibrate it writes the text over the top of this dialog, and it's not particularly readable. So I prefer to do the calibrate inside of Windows, but I'll quickly show you how this works. So we're going to calibrate our roll axis. You click here and it asks you to 0 axis and wait for the timer, so the timer countdown here, and then it asks you to move it through its full range and wait for the timer to finish, and then that's it, that's the calibrate done. So you can do it inside of here, but as I say, as an off-the-shelf product it writes over the top of this dialog and it's not particularly nice. In a future release I may have a look at seeing if I can move that text off and out of the way somewhere, or report an issue back to the developer of this to say, you know, it's not very good writing that text over the top of this, it doesn't make it particularly readable. Okay, so that's it for controller calibration. You've got your dead zone, which I've explained, you've got your 0 point where your center stick point is, and you've got your sensitivity as to, you know, what output you get for the input you're putting in, and you want to configure that, because if you don't configure that stuff then your quad really isn't going to fly that nicely. You know, you really want to get this stuff right for the controller that you're using, and then the quad will feel, you know, really nice to fly. There won't be any dead points, there'll be full throw on the stick, nice linearity in your controller movements. So, you know, don't just stop with going through here and assigning axes. Do go through the calibrate function and make sure that you follow the stuff that I've shown you here. Okay, that's it. I'll see you on the next video.